Hello, welcome to the Inside the Birds pregame show. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my co-host Adam Caplan, and joining us to break down this Week 10 Eagles game against the Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Stadium is Greg Cosell. Guys, the Eagles are 6-2 after a 28-23 win last Sunday against the Jaguars. Meanwhile, the defending NFC East champion Cowboys, they sunk to 3-5 last week after their 27-21 loss to the Falcons in Atlanta. The Eagles have won 4 straight. The Cowboys have lost 3 straight. And even more glaring, as Adam has pointed out several times, Dallas is 0-3 at home this season with a minus 66 score differential. Adam, we know the history of this division that nobody ever repeats the next year. But
That's right.
man, this is quite a fall from grace for a Dallas team that had a lot of talent on it, but minus 66 at home.
Geoff, when you look at this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the playoff game against Green Bay where they gave up 48 and the game was an absolute blowout. And the game against New Orleans, this is right before everything changed when they played the Eagles. They give up 44. Then the Raven game was close, 28. Then the Lions, here's the funny thing about the Lion game. They gave up 47, but the Lions pulled out of their starters in the fourth quarter. They could have given up 60 plus.
That's scary.
You've been to that stadium. What do you recall of it?
I don't like it very much, not because it's Dallas or anything. You know, I look at things objectively. I like football stadiums with football integrity. You know, Lambeau Field is, of course, one of my favorites, but I like other good football arenas as well. I think the Link is a good one. I think Gillette Stadium in New England is a good football stadium. I think, I'm trying to think of some of my other favorites. I never really liked Soldier Field, but there are a lot of good football arenas. Arrowhead, perfect example. Buffalo, Orchard Park. I just think that Dallas went a little overboard, not just with the scoreboard. They have women who dance on pedestals. I mean, it's like a circus there, and it's really about everything but the actual football when you're there. They pack it. There's a lot of fans. They can be excited. I don't think it's nearly as loud as other quote unquote indoor venues. I know there's a hole in the roof. But I just don't think it's a very loud or imposing environment, but it is, in my opinion, a circus. Craig, have you ever been to AT&T Stadium?
The year the Super Bowl was there, they had the snowstorm.
That's right.
Yeah, you were
They
there.
had no idea how to handle it.
I was there. Yeah. They had the ice storm, and and you literally, because I was staying right next to the stadium too, and as I recall, Radio Row was in Dallas, and ESPN set where we shot matchup was in Fort Worth. So you're right, you're 30 minutes from each, so you had to drive, and it was like driving on a sheet of ice because they didn't know how to deal with it.
That's it. So what Greg's talking about is they put dirt on the road.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what the hell to do.
They didn't know what to do.
And
it was really, I remember landing and it was like 18 degrees. And who thought it was going to be 18 degrees in Dallas?
It's terrible.
Right. It was
terrible.
Ridiculous.
It is.
Anyway.
By the way, I mean, it was 80 degrees here in November, and I didn't know what to do with myself either. So
I know.
In the reverse way, I think we're all a little bit crazy about what the weather's like.
One thing on the stadiums, I would add, I love the LA Mausoleum or the Coliseum. I'm a sucker for old stadiums like Wrigley Field.
Me too.
I thought it was the coolest thing, knowing what had gone on, Olympics, the great USC, all the great games over the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could decide how good they were, but some great games. I thought it was really cool. But I just felt at that stadium, the term is antiseptic or something. It just felt like it was like, what is this? It was really high up, by the way.
I would put AT&T Stadium in my top 8 worst stadiums to watch a football game, to be honest with you. Now the clear top 3 are the one in Washington, the one in Chicago, and then the one in Candlestick Park would have been there, but they're finally done with that. But there's another stadium that I really can't stand that I can't.
I haven't been actually to many stadiums, so I can't.
Oh, Giants or MetLife Stadium. I think it's a terrible stadium. I just think it's antiseptic. I mean, for being in New York, I feel like MetLife Stadium offers nothing for the fan other than a place to sit and watch either, a bad football team from the NFC or a bad football team from the AFC. But let's get into this game. This is
Do
the
it.
big game.
Do it.
Obviously, it's a big time for the Eagles. They have this first game against Dallas. They have not won in AT&T Stadium since 2017. And then after this game, they'll have a very short turnaround for their Thursday night game against the NFC East leading Washington Commanders. Although after today, maybe there's a different leader in the NFC East based on what the results of the games are. So there's a lot going on here. And the good news for the Eagles is that some of those injuries that we talked about all week long are going to wind up not being as bad or play a factor. In fact, guys, every player on the Eagles roster, active roster, does not carry an injury designation. It means tight end Dallas Goedert is going to return after 3-game absence with a hamstring injury, and Darius Slay is going to play despite missing the Jags game with a groin injury. And of course, this will be the final game on IR. It should be the final game on IR for left tackle Jordan Mailata, and he'll continue to be replaced by Fred Johnson. Now, the interesting thing, Adam and Greg, I don't know if you caught Nick Sirianni's press conference on Friday,
I did not.
but he let the cat out of the bag a little bit. For the first time in his career, Jalen Hurts on Wednesday was listed as a rest. Did not practice rest on their estimated practice report because they went through a walkthrough. So when they finally had the chance to ask Nick Sirianni about it, he said something about, oh yeah, well, he's dealing with the ankle. So then the follow-up question was, well, why was it rest? Nobody said anything about an ankle. And he said, did I say ankle? Did I mean ankle? I must have been talking about something else. But as our own Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com reported, it's a lower leg soreness thing that Jalen Hurts is dealing with, but he is expected to play. Adam,
He's playing.
Adam, we have to give Nick Sirianni, his game management has already been under question.
Yeah.
His media protocol lying is not very good either.
Well, let's put this, he's definitely playing. That's not in question because he's not on the injury report with an injury. But now that we know this, I'm definitely when this game is underway because Hurts, and we'll get Greg's opinion on this because he watches more than anyone. Hurts has run the ball so well lately. It is now he's a major factor running the football, and obviously Barkley is. I'm going to be looking for this, Jeff, early in the game. Are they going to design runs for him? Okay, is it lower leg soreness where you don't have to listen on the injury report, or is it indeed an ankle injury? We will see.
And Greg, we've seen Jalen have to deal with knee and ankle injuries in the past, and he's always been able to play. I think he missed the 2 games a couple of years ago that Minshew had to play in, but for the most part, Jalen holds up pretty well. And I've always thought, and we've talked about this on past pregame shows, those times that we thought he was hurt or dealing with a knee or dealing with it's usually wound up that he's ran the ball pretty well regardless.
Right. No, I don't think this will be an issue. I mean, Adam could be right. We'll see how they play the game, but my sense is it's not really a big factor.
All right. Well, that's a whole lot different than the Dallas Cowboys, who have. I kind of feel like we should do a non-injury report for the Dallas Cowboys because you probably have fewer names to go through. Look, we know Dak Prescott is out. He's got a long-term hamstring injury. And Cooper Rush is going to make his first start for the Cowboys at quarterback since 2022. So, Greg, you had to probably dig in the crates this week, if at all, to find yourself some Cooper Rush tape to go back to. Did you wind up doing that?
I remember him. I didn't really do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be digging in the crates for Cooper Rush tape as well.
I mean, as a starter, he's played well, though.
Yes. Yep.
Other than against the Eagles.
Yeah.
But it's been a while for him since 2022. We know that cornerback Deron Bland still going to be out as he's been out for a while with a broken foot that landed him on IR, not ready to come back. And also wide receiver Brandon Cooks still on IR. So that takes away those two. CeeDee Lamb is dealing with a shoulder sprain, and Zach Martin, the right guard, has a shoulder injury as well, but both are expected to play. And Adam, what do we know about Micah Parsons being listed as questionable?
I'm a little surprised only because the word around the club was that he'd be able to play, and he never took all the ones. So I'm a little surprised. If that's, hey, let's get him to the game, don't overwork him, it could be that. So that was just a little surprising to me because they were very optimistic pretty much all week that he could play. So, but if he does play, it's the guy's coming off a high ankle sprain. We've talked about this injury, for 7 years. It's not easy to come back from it.
Hmm.
You better know that you could come back with it. That's the thing because they struggled so badly. Let's not forget, right? They've had so many guys hurt as pass rushers, right? You've got Tank Lawrence, who they hope is back before the end of the season with a midfoot sprain. Sam Williams, was he suspended? I forget. Sam Williams used to be with them.
Yeah.
He's
He was hurt in the preseason. He's done for the year.
he got hurt and he also was suspended. Yes. So and then Marshawn Nealon had the severe knee injury, so he's
Yeah.
out for the year. I mean, how in the world can you rush the passer?
Well,
It's tough.
to answer your question, the Cowboys have not done that very well, and we'll
No,
get
they
into
don't. Yeah.
that. We'll get into that in a second. Two other guys I want to focus on is cornerback Trayvon Diggs, who was missing practice earlier in the week with a calf injury, and then they added on Friday illness to the list. Now he's questionable to play. And the same thing with the left tackle, Tyler Guyton, the rookie. He is questionable as he's dealing with a neck injury. But Greg, if Trayvon Diggs cannot play, if the illness gets worse or the calf gets worse, they're already not going to have Deron Bland, who I know you're not a big fan of his tape either. But what would the cornerback situation look like for the Cowboys if both of these guys don't play?
My guess is, well, we know Kalen Carson has been starting on the outside in place of Bland, so he's going to probably start anyway. But
Rookie.
my guess is they would move Jordan Lewis outside, um, and figure out who's going to play inside. Uh,
Hmm.
but they may even go with a three safety look and play Thomas, who is a free agent who came out in 2022. Then they'd be really in tough shape with players who'd have to play in uncomfortable positions.
All right. So obviously, Kalen Carson's a rookie. Jordan Lewis, normally an interior, a corner, or a nickel, I
He's
say, as
normally
the
their
fan
slot,
would say.
yes.
Yeah. So that would put an already hurting defense in a really bad spot if Bland can't play. But even if he does, Greg, I know that you have been not a fan of his, not Bland, I'm sorry, Diggs, Trayvon Diggs, that we're talking about with
Yeah,
the
Diggs. I
injury
mean,
and
Diggs is a
illness.
good player. He's a
Mhm.
beatable player, but he's a good player.
Right. And then we'll have to see how effective their left tackle Tyler Guyton is as he's dealing with a neck injury. We've seen this before. Guys try to play through injuries, but they either don't play well or they have to leave in the middle of a game because an injury flares up. What have you seen so far from Guyton, Greg?
Guyton's had his ups and downs, which I would have expected. He was a 14 game starter at Oklahoma, played solely on the right side. He's very, very athletic, one of the most athletic tackles to come out in last year's draft, but just lacked experience and then made the position switch to the left side because his movement traits, his balance, his body control lend themselves in most people's minds to being a left tackle. So he's capable in that regard, but he just doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's had his ups and downs this year.
All right. So something to watch there at left tackle as the Eagles are trying to get their pass rush going, specifically their four-man rush going in a game like this. Let us start as we break this game down with the Eagles offense against this hurting Dallas
Yeah.
defense. The Eagles over the last few weeks, and we talked about this on the Inside the Tape show that we do with Greg earlier in the week, they have become a heavy run offense. Don't want to call it a run first offense because they're still passing the ball more in the first half than they're running it. But Adam, as you pointed out, no other NFL team has run the ball more than passed the ball except for the Philadelphia Eagles. What does
Yeah,
that tell you?
well, first of all, it tells you that they're at least a balanced team. But I want to bring up something. You guys might remember this. So we were doing when we were previewing the NFC East teams, and we got to the Eagles, and Greg brought this up. He said, "I wonder if they signed Barkley to make Hurts and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, less of a factor throwing the football, maybe balance it out a little bit." We didn't have an answer then. I think we have our answer. Barkley's phenomenal. Maybe not asking Jalen to throw the ball 30, 35, 40 times a game is the answer. Put it in the 20s, high 20s, low 30s if you need to. And by the way, he's not turning the ball over lately at all. He's been very good with the football. It's all working, Jeff. It's all working. Having him throw less. He's also a part of the run game. We didn't know that coming into the season because he just didn't run the ball well last year. I would argue he's run the ball as well as he has since 22.
I think that's fair to say. Greg, you've always thought like there were areas of Saquon Barkley's game that can improve as a runner. And we've seen him running the ball pretty strong as well.
running better than he ever has. I mean, he is the foundation. If you look at number of first down carries per game of all backs in the NFL, first down carries per game, Barkley has the most. So this is
Mm.
an offense that runs through Barkley. It's always funny when you talk about this stuff. And Adam, you've heard me talk about this for 20 years. Jeff, you've probably heard me talk about it more recently. But teams tell you what they think of their players and how they want to play by what they do. We
Hmm.
don't have to interpret this. This is how they want to play. Barkley is the foundation. Hurts is it's ultimately a case where not that they don't want him to throw. I mean, obviously that's wouldn't be the right way to say it, but they want a certain number of dropbacks for Hurts,
Yeah.
probably in the 25 to 30 range. And they
Hmm.
want Barkley to be the foundation. This is what they want their offense to be. And as long as it's successful, number one, they control the pace and tempo of the game. They control the clock. They eat up yards. Their defense plays fewer snaps than many do. You don't want your defense having to play 75 or 80 snaps in a game. And their defense, therefore, has played a lot better as well. This is their profile now. And this is, you can win this way, especially if you hit some big plays in the pass game, which they're certainly capable of with the quarterback and the receiver.
Jeff,
Absolutely.
one thing I did want to mention, and you're talking about attempts and how they play it. Joe Banner, the former Eagles president, came on Patreon with us and he did a great interview with us earlier this week, kind of wide ranging. And he did talk about it's okay now, it's working. Why change it? But his point was, okay, this works now. When the schedule gets harder and you have to score, his thought process is you're going to have to throw the football, and it's hard to argue. We know Joe wants to
Well,
be, that
and by the way,
yeah.
I, just as an aside, I think we all know what Joe means, and we all know that it's. And I'm not saying Joe's wrong, but I think there's many ways to do that. If you can create explosive plays in your pass game, there's multiple ways to do that. Throwing the football is just a statement that okay, you got to throw. No, everybody understands that. This is not 1975 or whatever year the Dolphins won the Super Bowl with Bob
Yeah.
Greasy throwing, 7 balls or
And
nine.
Larry Zonka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we
Not.
all understand that you
Yeah.
have to make big plays in the passing game,
Hmm?
but that doesn't mean you have to throw it 45 times in order to do that. There's multiple ways to do that. I mean, a perfect example was last week, and I forget, was it late third, early fourth, where they went 13 personnel and they won the shot play and hit Devontae Smith for 46 yards? I
Hmm.
mean, there's ways to do that. I know what Joe's saying. Joe's saying that you're going to get in games where you're not controlling the pace and the tempo. And in those games, there's much more of a, hey, the other team scoring, we got to score. The other team scoring, we got to score. No question. There'll be games like that. Certainly, if they make the playoffs, there'll
Hmm.
probably be games like that. So we understand that. But I don't think you automatically have to say that you have to throw it 40 times. I mean, the Eagles are not going to become what the Bengals were on Thursday night, where Joe Burrow dropped back 60 times. They're not going to come out and play that way.
Oh yeah.
Right, right.
Not with
And
Barkley.
look, we've seen the Shanahan offenses of the league use the run quite a bit to mix with
I
the
mean, there have
pass
been
and be
many.
more
Look,
balanced.
they've
Yeah.
been they've been in championship games and 2 Super Bowls playing a certain style. And yes, have there been games where his quarterback, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo and now Brock Purdy, threw it 40 times? Yes, but that's not the way they go about building their offense. They've had a lot of really good wins against good teams in the playoffs where their quarterback's thrown it 28 times.
Right.
You don't have to drop back 45 times.
Right.
So Jeff,
To get back real quick, because I want to get to Greg. Greg
all
made
right.
a really good point about how the Eagles have been able to better control the pace and tempo of
Yeah.
a game with what they've been doing. And I want to bring up that after the third or fourth week, we were all discussing that one of the backbones of the Eagles offense, regardless of who's the coordinator, but basically since Jalen Hurts took over as quarterback, was that the Eagles have all done a great job of owning time of possession on a weekly basis. And at the end of the year, they've constantly been a top three, top five team, even under Doug Peterson, the year they went to the Super Bowl. And earlier this year, they were a very low in that department, but they have since worked themselves up to being fifth best right now in average possession time at 32 minutes and
And that
17
impacts your
seconds.
defense too, and that's something people don't realize.
Hmm. Absolutely. Keeps them well
Yep.
rested on the sideline.
Yeah.
So, Adam, the point you were about to make?
Yeah, so comparatively to the Super Bowl run of 22, Hurts is throwing the ball about 30.5 times per game. This year, under 27 times per game, which is really low by NFL standards. I think
Yep.
Jaden Daniels is a little bit lower than that, but it's working. And it's funny. I remember talking to some Eagle coaches over the years, going back during the Super Bowl run, and I'm like, "What, boy, you guys ran the ball a lot today." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because it was working. We stay with it." I was like,
There you
"Okay."
go. There you
It
go.
why would you change? But I think what Joe said at some point, look, they're going to play Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh made these two trades, the one in particular, Mike Williams. They have to play the Steelers. I know they're not in their conference, but they got to play them. They got to play Baltimore, who, by the way, couldn't stop anybody with their secondary. That might
But to
invite
your
you a
point,
little
you're
more.
going to have to outscore them. So you
Yeah,
can't run your
and
way to
yeah,
38, 52 points, whatever it's
sure.
going to
There are
take.
going to be
Right, right.
times. Greg said it. He's right. There are going to
And
be some times.
Baltimore, even though their pass defense, I think, is the worst in the league in
Yep.
terms of yards given up, they have a great run defense.
Right.
But and you mentioned Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh also not only did they trade for Mike Williams, but they traded for Preston Smith, who's still a good football player as well. So he's going to play on their D line. So yeah, I mean, of course there's going to be games like that. But all I'm saying is that that doesn't have to be your profile in order to be able to put up some points.
There you go. So we have talked recently when we talk about the Eagles offense and how well they're running the ball, how well they're passing the ball. We can't ignore the elephant in the room that they really haven't played great teams and
Right.
specifically great defenses over the last few weeks. And I'm not sure that that's going to change tonight when they're playing Dallas, which
And it
is
won't change.
all
Yeah, I mean,
sorts of
which
bad
of
and
course
beat up on defense.
it's a division game, Jeff. So again, we're not going to sit here and say, oh, they're going to win 45-3. But the
Right.
point is, they're not playing a very good defense, particularly with their front four right now.
Yes, some moron who works for Inside the Birds in August, Greg,
Uh-oh.
and I'm pretty sure I'm going to fire him pretty soon, said that the Mike Zimmer addition to the Dallas Cowboy defense might be the coaching move of the year because this person expected more stability, less man coverage, so the ability to limit explosive plays that Adam referenced that the Cowboys were giving up last year in the bigger games and the playoffs. And this moron thought that Mike Zimmer combined with the personnel was going to make this Dallas defense better. And after I fire this moron, you will not hear from me for ever again. 'Cause that moron was me.
I kind of knew you were going that way.
Yeah, that guy was me. And listen, I don't want to lay it all on Mike Zimmer because of the injuries, but even when they were healthy, they were not doing a very good job
No.
of stopping the run or the pass. So it's collectively has been a bad display of
Yeah.
defense for the Cowboys. Greg, why? Why are they so
Well,
bad?
I think the thing is when there's players who you draft high and expect to play well don't, you get kind of stuck because, then what do you do? I
Yeah.
mean, and a great example of that, and I really liked his tape coming out of college, but Mozzie Smith has not been very good up to this point. He's a second year player. Watching his college tape, there were times he looked very much like Jalen Carter. Um, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt that way. That's what his tape showed.
Hmm.
And he weighed 15 more pounds than Jalen Carter. So I thought watching his college tape, wow, he has a chance to be a really good football player. He's not been very good at all. I mean, he gets moved way too easily. He's not shown the ability to rush the quarterback. They have to play him. They don't have other people. So they play him. And, he's just not been very good. It's just, that's what the tape shows. It's not an opinion. That's what the tape shows.
Yeah.
So, he's one guy that, plays a meaningful number of snaps and just hasn't done the job. I mean, I think Odighizu is not a bad player. He's probably as solid as it gets. Look, they brought in Linville Joseph. And he's, obviously he's an older guy and he can only play a certain number of snaps, and he's not what he was in 2022 with the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl. So they move people around a lot. They played Chauncey Golston. He plays inside, he plays outside. They play Tyrus Wheat, who's a college free agent. I believe I did him coming out of college because the name is really familiar to me. So he's a guy who was a free agent. So now he's playing meaningful snaps. So, you're going down to street free agents in order to populate your D line. And it's a tough way to play.
The Cowboys, Adam, it's like Linval Joseph and Jonathan Hankins, and on offense, it's
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook and it's Ezekiel Elliott. You know what I think? I think about that. I forget who the commercial, maybe a Tostitos commercial with like Randy Moss and Emmett and Dan Marino.
Oh,
And they're
yeah.
all
The
thinking
new
about
one.
unretiring. And I'm like, well, are they getting calls from the Cowboys? Is
I mean,
that why they're thinking
what they should have done is they should have brought Neville Gallimore back. I don't know why they didn't bring him back,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think, is he with the Rams now, Greg? Is that where I saw him signing? think Gallimore might be
Yeah.
out there.
But
Who's a D tackle.
yeah, I forget. I know who he is, of course. But
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
who I actually met at the Super Bowl. You mentioned Hankins, who was with them last year.
Hmm.
It's just that Dante Fowler went with DQ to Washington. Dorrance Armstrong went to Washington. They lost some good players. We mentioned Sam Williams, who's not
Yeah.
available.
Yep.
And it's funny, I mentioned Wheat, and I just went back and looked at my notes. I kind of liked him coming out of Mississippi State,
Okay.
but he was undrafted, probably because people are kind of uncertain as to where he'd play, given that he's 6'2", 263, and he's not really a pass rusher. So, you have to figure out what he is. He's basically playing defensive end for them. And I actually think that he's shown up at times when I watch their tape. But the bottom line point is he was a free agent. So you're playing guys that you weren't anticipating playing when the season started.
Yeah.
How is Overshown, DeMarvion Overshown
Yeah,
there?
he's
How's he
he's
play?
he's a splash player because he's extremely athletic. So when you watch his tape, he's one of those inside out, sideline to sideline range guys. He can shoot gaps. He makes splash plays at him. You notice him on tape.
Yeah, he's number 13. He's an outside linebacker who was an ACL last year. He missed the
Yeah, he missed
season.
the entire rookie season. He was a third
Right,
round pick out of Texas.
right,
Um,
right.
and yeah, he was a good college player too. But I mean, he's a certain kind of player, but that's what he is. But he's a run and chase player.
Gotcha.
So really, as we look at this Dallas defense, which is not good, and not just us saying it, the statistics say it as well. I believe 26th overall in total yards. I mean, they're on third down, they're 12th, which isn't terrible. Fourth down, 26. They're just not a very good defense. And you can run all over them. They rank 30th in rush defense. So you look at this Dallas defense and you say, Micah Parsons coming back, it may just be that, this guy is the only threat of wrecking the game for the Cowboys defense, and he'll line up a lot, I assume, Greg. In Mike Zimmer's defense, when he was healthy, was he more stagnant or did he move
No,
around
he
a
moved.
lot?
He still moved him around a bit. Um, you know,
I'd
but
keep him over Fred Johnson if I were,
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm
Dallas.
sure that's what they would do. But the question is how many snaps is he going to play if he
Right,
plays?
right. Because he's been dealing, this will
I
be his
doubt
first
he's
he
going to play
plays with.
six. If he plays, I doubt he's going to play 60 snaps, but we don't know.
And you can always help him, Adam, which we've seen the Eagles have to do
Yep.
sometimes with Fred. You can chip on that side, you can put it back in there. But honestly, this feels like sort of the don't get cute, don't get outside yourself,
Yep.
run the ball, throw the ball when the opportunities are there.
Well,
No need to, put a sixth offensive lineman in there and try to throw him the ball, something crazy like that. Just do your thing.
I will say this, and just so to give fans a sense, I sometimes find, and I've had these conversations with coaches over the years. Obviously, I'm not just saying this. I think they find games like this where they feel like they can run and throw effectively. In some ways, those are harder to game plan because, Jeff, you just hit on a really interesting point. It's easy to say don't get cute, but what does that mean? Because they're
Mhm.
going to look at this defense and feel like we can run the ball. Then they're going to look at the corners and feel like we can throw the ball. So what is the battle? When you're scripting your first 15 and as the game progresses, depending on what's successful and not successful, how do you balance that? It's easy to say, well, okay, we can do both. But,
Mhm.
that's not so easy to kind of map that out.
That's a good
So
point.
I'm really curious to see how they do it because it's easy to say, well, give it to Barkley. They can't stop the run. Well,
Right.
they're also not very good at the corner position. And particularly if Jordan Lewis has to play on the outside, then you've got a rookie from Wake Forest and Kalen Carson. And you've got Jordan Lewis, who's not an outside corner, being forced to play on the outside to play against A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
So, it's
I think in my mind, I
Not
was
good.
thinking that,
no.
do what you do best and complementary football. And just because they might be completely decimated at corner doesn't necessarily mean you have to come out and throw 14 times on your first 18 plays.
No.
Yeah.
But how people think. Let's say they come out and they feel like, man, we have really great matchups on the perimeter, and for
Mhm.
whatever reason, those plays don't work. Maybe Hurts overthrows a ball, whatever it doesn't work. What are people immediately going to say? Why aren't they running the ball?
No,
Mhm.
it's
How
coming.
that stuff goes. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's not so easy just to. I mean, this is no knock on you. Believe me, I've had conversations with coaches about this. It's
Mhm.
not so easy when you feel like you can do both well.
I
Right.
would say this though, within that script, you're going to take your shot plays. You're going
No
after the ball.
question.
You
No
don't have to do it
question.
every down, which is your point. And I think Jeff's making the same point. it's a sort of a balanced attack. You take your shot plays with AJ. You know that's coming. It could be whoever they put the target on. We've used that term. That's what coaches use. Okay,
They're going to run a slant and
who
go
they're going
on.
to go after?
They're going to run a slant and go on Diggs early in the game. You know that's coming.
Is it?
Mhm.
How about what's that play you used to love? The Titans used to run with AJ, the bang eight.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's if they're in cover three zone. That's a great play against
Mhm.
bang eight
Okay,
scheme
against
flows.
the zone.
But
Okay,
Diggs is an aggressive player. They're gonna run a sluggo. They're gonna run a slant and go on Diggs
get him to go for it. Yeah,
with
I could see it
AJ because
right in front
AJ
of me.
runs a ton of in breakers.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
nice.
last thing I wanted to ask you about the offense, Greg, if you just watched the first series for the Eagles last week, you would have thought that they were going to live in a heavier offensive package because
Yep.
they had Ben Van Sumer out. They played a lot of 22, played some 21, played some 12. But then as the game, settled down and manifested, it wound up they played a ton of 11 personnel in that game. Are you noticing anything from a tape standpoint throughout the weeks as what Kellen Moore does on the first few 15 plays, the scripted plays versus the rest? Is he an explorer like Kyle Shanahan, where he does things differently in the first 15 plays to see what the defense is doing, or does anything jump out to you?
I would say he's more like that, Jeff, than not. I mean, I think that, he's because he's always been a guy, and I remember speaking to a coach when he got hired. I called a coach, a friend of mine, and said, hey, can you tell me a little bit about Kellen Moore? And I know, Adam, you've had some of these conversations as well with coaches that you respect, and to try to get a feel for and the first thing the coach said to me is Kellen will play to what he believes the
Yep.
best use of his personnel is in a given game. That's
Mm,
kind of, he's not one of those guys that I'm going to do this no matter what. He's not that guy. So, I think that there is a little bit of exploration because obviously you go in with a plan based on your whole week of study, but the plan doesn't always work exactly right for whatever reason. So I think he's someone who sort of sees how it goes and then feels like now I'm settled into the game in the way I best feel I can attack from both a personnel standpoint, a formation standpoint, a play calling standpoint. There's a lot of variables, as we all know. And you're right. Last week, he ended up playing a lot more 11 personnel than they had in previous games. And I think that speaks to the fact that he's not beholden to one thing.
right. And it'll be interesting, Adam, to see with Goddard back.
Yeah.
Calcaterra carved a nice little
I
niche
agree.
out last few weeks,
Yeah.
specifically out of 12 personnel. And obviously, Jack Stoll is the odd man out here,
Yeah.
but I'll be interested to see if they live in 12. You don't have to against the Cowboys. Again, you can stretch the
Right.
field, but if that's an effective package for you and you're getting the ball to those
Well,
guys and it's helping you move the ball in the middle of the field, it'll be interesting to see what
and that will
Calcaterra's all
depend,
about.
I think, on his sense of how the Cowboys choose to play their base offense,
Early
Mhm.
on.
their
Yeah.
12 personnel.
Yep.
Will they play with a third linebacker who's Leofa from a Notre Dame kid who was a third round pick this year? Will they maybe play with three safeties, which they've done before? Because they've actually moved Marquise Bell to safety, which he really kind of is
Yeah,
after he played linebacker last year. Will they decide to play big nickel? I think, see, those are the things you're never sure of until they happen.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what I would add, just based on what you and Greg were talking about, Kellen at his heart wants to play 11 personnel, and he wants to be vertical play caller. That's his background. But on Greg's point, first of all, you got to. It's what does your quarterback like? Well, it just so happens Jalen's one of the best deep throwers in the National Football League, so you're going to have that in there.
Right.
Mhm.
But on Greg's point, the coach that I talked to this summer on my training camp tour said his idea was that, well, they did sign Barkley, so they're going to have to run the ball. Kellen's not going to come out passing. They're not going to throw the ball 25 times in the first half. He's going to call to the personnel he's given, and that's it. Now, what we didn't know is how little of the third receiver would be used. That's just because of whether it's Jalen doesn't want to throw it to him, or they just don't believe in the third guy that they got from Washington. Whatever the case may be, he's not a factor. We have to come to the realization that the third receiver in the Eagles offense, Jahan Dotson, unless somebody gets hurt, I know he had a great catch last week. He's just not going to get the football.
Hey, this isn't a Nia Smith game. Come on, Adam.
Oh,
It's a
nice.
Nia Smith game.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he's a gadget guy, but here
He's
this
more
goes.
than that. His tape was really good. He was
I
hurt.
got you. I
So he's
got
only
you.
playing 8 snaps a game right now, and I'm not suggesting he's going to play 25 snaps this week.
Maybe
But,
next year.
but he's
Yeah,
an
maybe.
intriguing guy going forward.
He is number 82, but I
Yes.
don't know how much this season. But on Greg, Jeff made a point this summer, and this is before they signed or they trade for Dotson.
Was this before his Mike Zimmer point or after?
No, no, we didn't fire him then. Yes, I wish we would have taped it and you played it in this.
I'm heretofore banned from making any football
Yeah.
points any longer.
Well, we understood what you're talking about, but on Calcaterra, that's the thing. Could Calcaterra now, with Goddard back, be that third guy? Could they? Now, I know you'll call 12 personnel, Jeff. I remember your point. It'll be called 12 personnel, but it's really 11 as Calcaterra as a slot tight end or move tight end.
And Goddard can split too, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
So
like to call it 11 personnel in 12 personnel's close.
that's what you said. Yeah, I couldn't remember. So good. You did remember.
And by the way, they
Good
could
point.
do that because if they line up in 12, they're likely to get base defensive personnel, but then they can spread it out formationally and get some advantages in the pass game. And then they put the Cowboys in a bind to see, okay, well, maybe if 12 personnel, maybe we have to play nickel because if we're getting hurt in the pass game by spread formations out of 12, then they have a better opportunity to run the football. I mean, this is the chess match that goes on in every game and the kinds of things you don't know for sure until the game is starting to play out.
Question on 21, Jalen Carson, the rookie from Wake Forest.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on him?
Kalen Carson.
Jalen Carson. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kalen Carson.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull him up because I kind of liked him.
Because he's going to be playing like he's starting. So I'm interested to see what.
Oh no, he's been starting a good part of the season.
Yeah. He'll continue.
Which is always tough, by the way, as you
Land.
rookie corners who are not first round picks. I mean, even first round picks sometimes struggle at that position. So when you're asked to play it as a second, third, or a fourth, that can be difficult. I forget where he was drafted.
So he's a rookie, right?
Third.
Yes.
Yeah.
Third round pick.
So
Out
that
of
means
Wake
he was in
Forest.
the 2024
Fifth.
draft.
I'm sorry, fifth round.
Oh, fifth. That's what I thought. Yeah, it was a day 3 guy.
So I kind of liked his tape. I thought he had good size, good length for the position, a plus athletic profile that he could play press, that he could play off coverage, although he was meaningfully better as a press man corner in college. Showed some targeted physicality in press, but he did have a lot of experience playing both. I said he does not possess an elite traits profile, but he has more than enough quickness and fluidity and competitiveness to develop into a starting corner with experience. So now, I don't think a team drafted him with the idea that he'd be a starting corner this year, but that's the way it's played out. And also, one reason he was a fifth round pick, and you guys know this, he ran a 4.53 at his pro day. And normally when corners run over 4.5, unless they think they're unbelievably special in one particular area, that drops guys immediately.
All right, good stuff. So that is the Eagles offense versus Dallas defense matchup. Let's flip it and talk about the Eagles defense against the Dallas Cowboys offense. And again, without Dak Prescott, we are not going to sit here and break down Cooper Rush or what makes CeeDee Lamb good. We know what makes CeeDee
We
Lamb
know,
good.
yeah.
Right. So
And
I want to
by
get
the way, it's almost impossible to sit here and break down Cooper Rush. The guy hasn't played in a while. When he's played, he's been okay, but he hasn't played in a while. We just don't know.
Exactly. So here's what I want to do. I want to have a strategical conversation with you guys. And if you think I'm crazy, tell me. But we all know this. When you're a team like the Cowboys and you have lost 3 in a row and you're struggling and you're playing a good team and you have all these injuries, your coaches are usually burning both ends of the candle the week before to try to figure out something to do to beat the team you're going to play. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a schematic wrinkle. So you're struggling to run the ball. The Eagles have at times, not lately, but at times shown that they can be a little leaky in run defense. Maybe you add an extra offensive lineman or fullback or something to 13 personnel, and you try to run the ball just to keep possession a little longer. And when you do have to pass the ball, hear me out here, spread empty and try to get the Eagles in dime looks and take advantage of Avonte Maddox on the field as much as you possibly can. I mean, it sounds like a sarcastic. I'm serious. Put 4 or 5 receivers, see what the Eagles respond. And if you could get like a Cavante Turpin matched up against Maddox, go for it because you've got Lamb. Of course, you can feed the ball to him as much as possible, but they're going to need more than just throwing to CeeDee Lamb to be able to win this game. So that's what I, in my head, came up with. You guys can tell me if any of that sounds crazy or illegitimate to you.
You don't think it's going to be a Rico Dowdle game?
Well, like I said, you throw an extra offensive lineman out there and run it with whoever.
My sense is that, you could see a few different things, but, and I think I don't want to use the word gimmick because when you do these kinds of things, and by the way, there could be a gimmick play, a flea flicker, that kind of stuff. But
Sure.
I think overall, I think when they look at this, you're basically talking about what should their game plan be. That's what you're basically saying. They
Yes.
have not shown any ability to run with any kind of meaningful consistency
Mm.
in a conventional run game.
Right.
Knowing Mike McCarthy, unless one of his assistants really gets to him, Mike McCarthy is not necessarily one of those guys. He's pretty old school.
Hmm.
Um, I think they're going to feel, or he's going to feel, and again, we don't know the internal meetings they're having. Jerry Jones is going to be involved. There's a lot going on there, okay, that we're not privy to. But I would bet if Mike McCarthy had his druthers, he would be talking about we're going to be physical, we're going to come out, we're going to try to run the football. We're going to play old school football. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong,
Hmm.
but I think that he's going to try to do that. Now, having said that, I don't think your idea about spreading them out is a bad idea because obviously it forces the defense to declare. It gives Cooper Rush a cleaner pre-snap read, but you're not doing that on 35 snaps, obviously.
No, no, yeah, of course not.
Right.
Right.
Are there ways to do that? Of course there are.
Hmm.
They're going to move CD Lamb around because, the Eagles have shown at times that they will double or bracket CD Lamb. So they'll move him around to try to get a sense of how the Eagles want to play him. They just traded for Jonathan Mingo, and I know, I happened to hear some people talking this week as if Mingo stinks, and obviously he didn't do much in his year and a half with the Panthers, and he never, reached the end zone. So a lot of people were ripping the Cowboys for trading for him. But his college tape was really good. And he was with a pass offense that was, for the most part, a little bit dysfunctional. So I'm
Hmm.
not saying he's going to come in this week and go 9 for 150, but he's a pretty talented guy. So, and the Cowboys, obviously, someone in their scouting department felt the way I did watching his college tape. And by the way, I'm not the only one who felt that way about Mingo. So we'll see, how many snaps he gets this week. But yeah, they could certainly do something like that, Jeff. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean,
Same
this is
with
what coaches do. They try to find the weakness that they can
right,
exploit. And if you
right.
can
Mhm.
somehow get the Eagles not only to declare, but to get Avonte Maddox on the field and give yourself maybe your only advantage outside of whoever CeeDee
Well, and
Lamb
there's no
is
guarantee
next
the
to.
Eagles will do that. They could
That well,
stay
that was my counter
they could
question is
stay
do the Eagles
nickel.
not do that?
They could
Yeah.
stay nickel
Sure,
too.
sure.
Yeah.
One thing on Mingo, the word around the club was you look at Jonathan Mingo, who looks like an old school X receiver, body beautiful, he's built, he could run, he's strong, but he just never applied himself. He just never got there. And remember, a different general manager drafted him. Dan Morgan, the new GM, was a part of it, but it's now his call, and he didn't want him.
Right.
So they wanted to move him, and he's a very talented kid. Greg's right. Maybe a new beginning, and they do need him because with Brandon Cooks out, I know Jalen Tolbert, we'll talk about him briefly. Tolbert's done a nice job in what
He
they've asked
has.
him to do. But Mingo's very gifted. It just sometimes maybe a
Yeah.
new beginning. Maybe a new
I mean,
beginning.
he had, I thought, and I typed this, that he was one of the most intriguing prospects at receiver in the 2023 draft with his traits profile of size, stride length, physical strength, competitiveness, formation versatility. He was big, he was smooth, he ran well enough. For whatever it means, he ran a 4.46, which is pretty good at 6'2", 220. So, again, I don't know what happened. Adam may know more, as he just suggested, but this guy's got physical traits. He's a
Mhm.
talented guy.
How about Ferguson? How much has he been involved in the? I thought he was going to have maybe a bigger year, but
Yeah,
obviously, in
I did
general, the
too.
Cowboys just haven't been good offensively, and he might just be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, I like Ferguson a lot. I thought last year he really came on. He became a weapon that you could use pretty much all over the field, but he was very good in the middle of the field. For whatever reason, this year it just seems like, even when Dak, and obviously Dak had been playing until the last game, it just seemed like the pass game was just erratic. I'm trying to find the right word, but
Hmm.
it didn't have the same feel. Because last year, say what you want, I mean Prescott had a phenomenal year, and their pass game was really, really good, really
Right,
good.
right. Well, I think some of that speaks to their offensive line. Just has I haven't watched a ton of Dallas, but I know Zach Martin has not played to the level that
Not this year,
he
no. He's
has
been beat.
played.
And say what you want, but Tony Pollard had 250 plus carries last year for over 1,000 yards. So
Yep.
I mean,
Mhm.
they had a viable run game,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
And they don't this year. That's
And
right.
who's
They do
who
not
and
have a
Pollard
viable run game.
was always effective in the pass game. By the way, Jake Ferguson had an MCL sprain earlier this season.
That's right.
He missed
He
one
didn't miss
game.
much time though.
Week 2, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
No, he
yeah.
only missed one game, but that set him back.
Yeah, that sent him back. And by the way, even if you come back and play, because one of my guys on the matchup show had an MCL sprain when he played in college, and he said you can come back, but you're not going to be 100% probably for 3, 4 weeks.
Right.
There you
So
go.
I'm sure Ferguson's battling through that.
Yeah. Interestingly, their second round pick from 2 years ago, Luke Schoonmaker, really just hasn't developed
Crazy.
Adam into to
Yeah,
a more
and I liked
well-rounded
it. Another
player,
guy
right?
coming out of Michigan. I thought he was pretty multi-dimensional. Somewhat in some way similar to Ferguson, who came out of Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
those are two schools with run games. They
Yeah.
block. I thought Schoonmaker had a chance to develop into a pretty solid number 2 type tight end, but it hasn't quite worked out.
No,
Yeah.
they thought he was an athletic wide tight end. Well, here's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
It hasn't happened. He had a couple foot injuries, but things have gotten so bad. He had one snap last week on offense. That can't
Yep.
happen for a second round pick. Like
No,
that,
no, no,
he's supposed to be their Y, and that
no.
this
You're
kid
right.
spanned Ford plate ahead of him. That's not good.
Yep.
No, no, and he's another Big Ten kid.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
from
So,
Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah, they draft all these Big Ten tight ends.
It's
well,
interesting.
it's a pretty good conference for producing tight ends. I mean, between Iowa and Penn State alone, you got a lot of good
Hey,
talent out
they
there.
got 2 this year that are going to go in the top 40, Loveland and Warren.
Yes, they
Wow.
do. Yes, they do.
What that?
And wait, does Iowa not have a tight end this year? I just realized
I don't.
that'd be
Oh,
like the
they
first
do.
time in
They
a long
do.
time.
They do. Luke Lachey. They do.
Oh, that's right, Luke Lachey. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Big Ten. Good. It's the tight end conference. It's the only conference where they still run the ball and play smash mouth football. So that's why.
All right. All right.
All right. So that is basically that's what I wanted to do. I
It's
wanted
hard to get a
have,
read on their offense.
yeah, I
mean,
want to have some kind of
yeah,
conversation about
yeah.
what we think Dallas could try to do that would maybe
Spread 'em
catch the
out.
Eagles off guard. And even if you can't get Avonte Maddox on the field, if you can get them into man coverage situations, which we've seen Vic doing lately, and get Reed Blankenship maybe in a coverage responsibility versus a Turpin or versus a Mingo or somebody on the inside where the speed comes in handy, then maybe you can pop 1 or 2 vertical routes and do something.
Jeff, I'll say this about Cooper Rush. That one, I think it was against the Vikings, one of his starts. He played exceptionally well.
Yes. Yes, he did. I remember that game.
Yes.
Not a good athlete, but he could throw the football. I know against the Eagles, he was terrible, but at least he's shown he's capable. So on your point,
Wasn't he 4-0, Adam, when he took over for until the loss to the Eagles? Wasn't he 4-0 or 3-0 or something like
might
that?
be. I know
Yeah.
he was doing well before that game, but if you with Mingo, who Greg mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Tolbert could run. He's not a bad player. He's coming into his own a little bit.
Yep.
CeeDee Lamb, my guy Jalen Brooks, 83, who's not bad, and Turpin, who you mentioned, Jeff. I don't know much about Flournoy, 80, the 6 rounder, and Ferguson. There's enough there if they could protect to make plays, but the thing comparatively to the Eagles last year, this year, the Eagles are actually deep a corner where they were not last year.
Right.
Correct. 4-0, by the way, is what Cooper Rush was in 2022 when he had to take over for Dak
Wow.
Prescott until the 3 interception loss against Philadelphia. But yeah, he played well in those games. 4-0 is pretty good. So, all right, so let's get to the part of the game that, or the part of the show, I should say, that we love the most, and that's where we predict the winner and the player of the game. The Eagles are 7.5-point favorites, by the way, on the road. There have been this year more than I can remember some really big road favorites this year. And that goes to our discussion about home field advantage not being what it used to be in the NFL. So the Eagles are 7.5-point favorites going into this game in a place they haven't won since 2017. Greg, I'll start with you. Final score, player of the game.
73-10. No, just kidding. I'm going to go 31-16, just for one of a different score. And I'm going to pick Saquon Barkley. I think that he'll have some big runs in this game. And I think, again, not a yardage total, but I think that he will get through the first level of the defense. And I think he will have some big runs.
All right. Adam, who is going to win and who's the player of the game?
I've got it. Eagles 30, Cowpokes 17. Player of the game. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown because they're bad at corner. We just talked about Diggs' talent, but he goes for the pump fakes. He's a big play guy, but he gives up big plays. A.J.'s going to have a monster game. And remember, he was cleared Friday to play, coming off the knee issue. And they've given up 41.75 points per game over the last 4 at home. I don't know what's going on, and the only reason why I see them only scoring 30 is they're going to be up big and start pulling starters. They'll run the ball in the fourth quarter, and if it's close, they're scoring over 40. I can't imagine this game is going to be close.
All right. And your player of the game you said was
I'm going to go with AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. Okay. I am going to take the Eagles to win 28-16. And my player of the game, the Eagles are in Dallas. So it's got to be Dallas Goedert. He's going to come back. I see him 6-7 catches. I think he's going to abuse the middle of that Dallas defense. And Jalen Hurts is going to welcome him back nicely. Like a 7-catch, maybe 100-yard game and then a touchdown.
Where's Jaron Curse? Where's Jaron Curse, the 6'4" safety when you need him? Man, that's they don't have him anymore.
No. Remember how they were blessed with some really good safeties for a while? They would play the 3 safety package.
Is he in the league, Adam?
No. I don't think so.
He's in the league.
Yeah. Wow. Hard to believe.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, Harry. Hard to believe.
All right. That is going to do it for the Inside the Birds pregame show. For Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Enjoy your football watching.